is gone and left me, and my dog is gone astray. But if there's one thing that's worth living for, it's Tom Lomel and Gadzooka on Disorganized Play. Hey, hey, hey. Hey, everybody. There's a little country for you, kindly requested by BSB Care. So, kudos to us.
Yeah. Well played, Tom. Well played.
Wow. Okay. I didn't realize just how flesh-colored this shirt is.
It's very flesh-colored. I think you.
This isn't a shirt. I got a Bards Are Awesome tattoo, everybody.
Yeah.
I lost a bet with my wife.
You got a T-shirt tattoo with Bards Are Awesome.
Hey, thanks for joining me. I am your host and dungeon master, Tom Lomel. This is our illustrious leader and producer and all-around keyboard monkey, Dom Zook. I don't know which title of those.
Keyboard monkey is probably the best one.
Well, maybe by weight, not by volume.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us. This is Disorganized Play, a show where on Tuesdays we prep a session of Dungeons & Dragons. On Wednesday night, I run a session of Dungeons & Dragons. And on Thursdays, most Thursdays,
Depending.
not the past 2 Thursdays, most Thursdays we come back and talk about how it went. So you get to see kind of the before visionary formulating stage, the actual panic doing stage, and then you get to see the hand-wringing, armchair quarterbacking, what could we have done differently? What are those wily players up to stage? Yeah. So that's the format of our show. I explain it every time, but you know, sometimes we have new people in the chat. If you are new, welcome. Thank you for joining us. If you're not new, start tweeting. Come on, get out there on the social medias, everybody. So, yes, we are going to run down today's agenda. I do have to do a tight hour today. I have to get to Santa Monica. That's one of the reasons we're an hour early, is I have an audition that I have to get to. It is the busy time of the season in Los Angeles here for all things on camera related, whether it's commercials or TV or what have you. So that's just a little inside baseball. Mm-hmm. I'm a very important actor in Hollywood, California. So today's topics, we are going to run down the recap. Because it was Thursday, it was a holiday, and we had our Wildcards Marathon to broadcast instead of our regularly scheduled content. I hope you partook of that. We did not do the recap, so we're going to do the recap today. We will then move on and talk to a little bit about the deeds of Ravendare, kind of where the plot is at. We're sort of left on a cliffhanger, which I always like to do. Particularly for our stream sessions. Mm-hmm. It's a good question. Dom, when you were running a game, how often do you feel the need to like cliffhanger your home session versus like try and like, I'm definitely guilty of like, well, let's just push this combat and like in the last half an hour and then like kind of wrap it up and then it goes an hour over and that sort of thing. Like, how do you feel like you need to land on a resolution, or are you willing to just go and we'll pick that up next time?
Yeah, well, less so in a home game than on a stream game.
Yeah.
But I love the cinematic nature of leaving on a cliffhanger and having that like be, you know, the thing that brings your players back and everything. It's like, oh, I'm really excited about this, and this is going to drive me and you know, push me towards.
I can't wait to find out like what that happens, or they can kind of like brainstorm, like, oh, this is what we're going to do to that guy.
Yeah.
This is how we're going to resolve that combat, or what have you.
Hi, Laura. How's it going? Good to see you.
I can't read everybody's names in the chat.
Well, it's because it's the gray.
It's the gray background, and I didn't bring my iPad with me today. I shortchanged myself. We moved it up an hour, and I forgot that we'd moved it up an hour.
Uh-oh.
And so it was 12:20. I'm like, well, I can stop at the Goodwill. It was like, wait a minute, 12:20. I have to be someplace in 40 minutes. So, yeah, we did leave on a cliffhanger. So we're going to talk about kind of like where things are at with Ravendare, and then finally we're going to talk about some possible paths forward. So, and I don't think this is. I don't know. I'm going to lift the veil on my own improvisational jazz DMing style, which is we're well off of the beaten path of the actual module as it stands. Once they confront Ravendare, that's supposed to be the end. But I feel like we have, 3 sessions left?
Yeah, for the rest of the year.
For the rest of the year?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to start Expedition to the Barrier Peaks on before the big end of the year. I mean, that just seems silly. We've got 1, 2, 3. I mean, technically we have 4, but I think the 20th will probably be a one-shot. Even if that's, oh, look at this. Oh my, great. Hello, Laurelania. Or is it Laurelania? I know how to pronounce BSB Care, so I'm gonna stick with that. Anyway, so I think we need to, like, one of the things we'll talk about in the path ahead is like, okay, how does the adventure go forth, given that there's no adventurer to go forth with? I have some ideas about that, but it certainly is like this blank canvas, which for me personally as a DM, I don't work well with a completely wide open blank canvas. I don't like inventing the entire story myself. I'd much rather take a published adventure and then remix, rehash, edit, change, heighten, chop, make it my own, rather than, you know, the limitless world of creativity. Like that, for me, that's analysis paralysis. I stare at that blank canvas and I go, oh, if I make a mark, then it'll be ruined. So that's the way my brain works. Maybe your brain works differently.
No.
So that's where we're at. So recap wise, the party was summoned by one of Xanathar's capos. Is that the way to pronounce that? C-A-P-O?
Capo? Well,
capos.
capo.
Capo.
Capo is the thing for the guitar, right?
Yeah, but he's
Capo, I think.
Capo. He's a...
If I remember my Godfather, I think it was Capo.
all right, very good. Well, at any rate, you know who I'm talking about.
Capo.
Baudry.
Hey, thank you, Thomas.
Thomas W. Young, Twitch Prime, subbing up.
Remember that you get a free reroll.
You get a reroll that you get to give me tomorrow night. You can give it to whoever you want.
Yeah.
On any show that you want. You don't have to use it tomorrow night.
It's true. Capo, says BSB Carrot.
Capo.
Ooh,
Capo.
Laurelania, thank you. Thank you so much.
Wow, fancy.
You also get a reroll.
It's true. You can't give it to Dom. That's the only. Well, you could give it to Dom on Friday nights, right?
No. Fridays are Teenagers from Outer Space now. We'll talk about that later.
All right, we'll talk about that later. So they were summoned by Baudry showed up, who is the capo of Xanathar, and says, "Come on, you're coming to meet the boss." And they were kind of like, "Why should we?"
Yeah.
And he didn't. I don't know. He's basically because the boss doesn't ask twice. That's sort of what it was.
Yeah.
Which I felt was a little bit of a. It was a cheap tactic, right? Like DM wise, it's like, well, because he's the most important. You know, he's the crime lord of Waterdeep. That's why.
Right.
Not a good like story hook motivation for them.
No.
On the other hand, like Baudry, like I guess you could say because there's money in it for you or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, also it's Xanathar. Like, why would you not go? You know,
why wouldn't you want to go see that guy, right? Like, if you say no, he's gonna be like, okay.
Yeah.
And then bad things are gonna happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It just felt like story-wise, it feels a little bit like, well, this is the only place for the story to go, so I guess this is what we're going to do. On the other hand, it should be a really intriguing and compelling offer of what comes up next. And I felt like that was actually achieved. Like, when we talked on last week, Tuesday, I said, one of the things that's on the table here is that this is an element to really introduce the fantastical into our world building, right? Mm-hmm. Because Xanathar is a guy who has essentially unlimited funds. He is literally one of those DM NPCs that you can go, he just does this. That happens. Mm-hmm. And so take advantage of that opportunity. And I felt like with the weird, spiraling staircase, but then ending up in this room that was the like this very detailed and intricate replica of the surface world. Mm-hmm. I thought that was interesting. I enjoyed that piece of world building, and it especially paid off when Havana goes, "Does this look like something that Warwent would have built?" And I'm like, yes, yes. Thank you for the reroll, Thomas W. D. Young. I will count on it tomorrow night and put the players in a pinch with it. So I thought that was a way to make what was going on very, very interesting. Who was it who points out?
You can't.
Addicted Decoy points out that, hey Nate, welcome to the stream. Addicted Decoy points out that the crew loves making friends with bad guys. That I felt a little bit guilty about, because it's another time where the crime lord is giving them sort of this like opening, this offer, like, I need to work with you. On the other hand, I think there was a lot of Xanathar is testing them, and he wants to kind of like wheedle them into like a sense, lull them into a sense of complacency.
Sure.
And I feel like somewhere down the line here, he's going to swing the hammer on, okay, this is all great, I want my map.
Right.
And that's when things are going to get really ugly.
Yeah.
But I think it's fun to kind of have him, like this whole thing of him doing a play, which also felt a little bit kind of like pushed on the players as a DM, like, well, you have to do this because I felt like I could have done a better job of setting up a good hook and motivation for that. It was fun to do, but it was definitely one of those moments where it was like, I guess we're doing this because we're on stream and we can't say no.
Sure. Yeah, that's hard. That's hard.
Estel Castillo points out, these PCs are pretty much the bad guys, aren't they? They have a paladin in their group. How could they be the bad guys?
Ooh, Nelson, thank you.
I think they're trying to be the good guys, but they've fallen in league with some bad people, and they're getting taken advantage of, I think is the best way to describe it. I think also that they're being used as pawns of more powerful people, right? Especially with Xanathar and Gingy. I don't know about Gingy. Like Gingy, I think they're now kind of like equals in terms of like whether they're using each other or not. I feel like they're more comrades, right? They're on the same sort of power level. Whereas with Xanathar, it's definitely, be my playthings for a little bit, and let me see if I can get you to take care of this thing that is very messy that I don't want to be seen to be involved in.
Yeah, for sure.
So we had the scene with them doing the little play thing. I hope that Megan kept those weird eyeball things around. That was my favorite.
They're still
moment
here. They're still here.
The entire night was just discovering. My wife saw that the next morning. She's like, "What's wrong with you?"
Now she's asking.
It's too late, honey. It's too late. So I thought. I thought the whole idea of the theater scene, I felt like I was finding my way around it a little bit. It could have been a little more clearly defined in my mind about why he wanted this done. But I think it also was an information gathering thing for Xanathar, like, what do you know? And one of the things that we talked about last time was it would be great if the players had, like, let's time out, stop, recap, and compare all of our clues. And we managed to find a way to do that in-game with Xanathar saying, well, what do you know? And kind of probing and questioning, but then flipping it around and going, well, here's what I know, and slamming that letter on the table, right? And that letter on its own doesn't really tell you much, right? It certainly doesn't mention a cult of Asmodeus or anything like that, but it points the finger at the right people, and that gets us to the final scene, I guess. So they agree to go and investigate on behalf of Xanathar. Xanathar basically has the same job for them that the theater director had, right? Which is find out who is behind this. And so they go to the college because that's where their next obvious lead is. And I thought that was I really had a good time painting that scene. I always wish I was more prepared, but I liked the idea that there was a recital going on. There's, essentially college kids roaming about. They're all a little bit like giddy, rowdy, drunk. There's the so-and-so was murdered at this theater or had a heart attack on stage, which was clearly a murder. I thought that was all great. I felt like it really gave the atmosphere of what a Bardic college would be like on whatever Saturday night in Waterdeep. So I felt good about that. And it was funny to me. So we had something that chat unlocked, which is the party has a mysterious benefactor that they don't know about, right? And in my mind, that was just going to be this woman who was wearing the fur-lined cloak and was wearing all white, and she's the textile head of the textile business or whatever it was. She sells rugs or whatever.
Right.
And it was a fun moment where Avril is just stuffing her face with those lemon bars. It was, the nice thing about this particular scene was we had a great contrast from you're literally in the bowels of Waterdeep inside this weird replica, mechanical version of the city, having an audience with the beholder crime lord as he makes you stage a play, to the very commonplace, I'm going to go to the college and I'm going to eat all the free bars they have at the reception after the recital.
Avril is the most precious.
So I liked that moment. But anyway, she was supposed to be the mysterious benefactor, and she was the one who was supposed to be, I don't know, in my mind, she's maybe like one of the Lords of Waterdeep who's taken an interest in what's going on or whatever. That wasn't going to necessarily become clear right from the outset. But she locks eyes with Avril, and Avril's like, "Hi, how are you?" And I realized in that moment, I'm like, I need to come up with a voice. And I've done so many like very bad British voices, accents, that I need to do something different. And so I just decided to reflect back at her what she threw at me, which was the Southern thing.
Sure, yeah.
Right? Now, if you want a quick tip of improvisation, if you are stuck for what to do, start reflecting back in some way what the players at the table are giving you role-playing wise, and then build and heighten it, and that will turn into something, right? But in this case, it's been established as canonical that halflings have a Southern accent.
Right.
And that's when it turned into, and I did not plan this at all. Like, oh, that's weird. You have a strange accent. And she says, oh, that's funny. I'm a human, but I was raised by halflings. And she's like, I'm a halfling who's raised by humans. That was not at all. That was not pre-planned. That was not a plot hook that I was trying to throw at her. In fact, if you go way back into Disorganized Play, you'll hear me talk about how I'm deliberately sort of avoiding getting Avril's family involved in the plot in any way, because she really sees her character as being defined by being an orphan and being independent. So if you bring her family into it, all of a sudden it starts to deteriorate or undermine her character concept. So I was not deliberately trying to do that. Now, I think it'll be interesting to see where that goes.
Yeah.
But
that's one of those like just sort of handed to you moments where you're just like, oh yeah,
yes,
yeah, that does work out, doesn't it?
It's just like the war went moment, right? Where she goes, does this look like? And I had not planned that. That had not occurred to me, even though it seems obvious on its face. I had my like little DM blinders on of like, oh, I think if I was a beholder, I would want this beautiful like seascape vista before me at all times. But it would have to be mechanical because my anti-magic ray would turn shit off all the time, right? So it needs to be mechanical in order for it to function. And if I'm a DM NPC who has unlimited funds, I will build that thing. So I didn't think at all about war when it came to that particular set piece. But then she said it, and I was like, yes. Like, yes, the PCs, the players always have a brilliant idea. And when you see moments like that intersect perfectly with your campaign and don't ruin anything else in any way, shape, or form, or don't change something so dramatically that you have to really put the brakes on, you gotta embrace those moments. You gotta grab that. And those were two of them right there with Avril that both like dropped just needle perfect right into the groove.
Yeah.
So that was great. I enjoyed that piece of it. So they meet her, and then I decided, we need to have, like, Ravendare turns out to be there, and we need to have some sort of little, like, let's get the plot moving along was part of it, right? Now, I did not expect to reveal the full plot of what, who was responsible for what was going on, but I was like, let's keep things moving.
Yeah.
So Ravendare is there. And he just goes, and honestly, from my point of view, his motivation is like, let's sound the party out about what they know. He must at least know that they're investigating what's going on. He's placed high enough, he probably has enough sources feeding him information that he knows that this particular party of people is somehow on his trail. But he probably doesn't know what they know. And so, under the guise of let's be cooperative, oh yes, this is very concerning, let's talk to these people. Oh, come into my office. And honestly, I don't think the party suspected him to be a criminal mastermind or whatever role he has, because that's not fully been defined. But Ava drops the thing of like, oh, she drops the secret Harper's phrase, and he's like, oh, okay, all right. So I think they thought like, oh, he's in with the Harpers, too. And then they get in the office, and the third unexpected thing that happened in last week's session is that Avril once again goes, well, have you seen this? And it's the letter that just it is 100% incriminating, which completely like pins him in a corner of like, oh, this guy said he was going to investigate this weird sort of subset of cult or this sect of non-Harpers who have taken up residence or have infiltrated the Bardic College, and I'm going to follow up with him and see if we can get some more information about it. I'll report back to you in 2 weeks, and then a week later that guy's dead.
Yeah.
It's pretty obvious. Like the first thing you'd do is go like ask Robin Dare, what did you know and when was the last time you saw him? And he'd be like, I don't know. Maybe he would be a better liar than that. Yeah, Addicted Decoy does point out that, yes, Nate, that is exactly correct, Nullzone. Sorry, I don't know if you want me to use your real name or not, but...
Too late now.
Nullzone suggested that we run this adventure. So we've been going well off the rails with it. It has been fun. I did manage to get them to disabuse themselves of all of their equipment. You can't bring that. It was a moment that was a little frustrating for me as the DM because I honestly don't care whether they go in armed to the teeth looking like a bunch of ruffians because I will respond to that situation as appropriate. Or if they go as slumming it as a bunch of like wannabe like grad students at the college. Either of those things is fine. And I'm happy with both of the outcomes, but they took a while they kept going back and forth to pick one. Now, I really did appreciate Eric's character point of view, which is he's a doppelganger who does not want to disguise himself. He's worked very hard to craft one particular persona, and it makes him feel less human and less accepted within society to use his shape-changing powers. I thought that was a cool take on it. In terms of the party dynamic of like, guys, just pick one. I don't.
Yeah.
You decide. But we did talk them out of that, right? So that was that brings us sort of to like where are we at now at the end of the adventure? So the paladin. Eric was planning to drop like a zone of truth, like it's time for you to reveal everything that you know. And Robin Dare just sort of like puts his head in his hands and he's like, it is time for me to reveal. And then the horns start growing and his eyes start glowing. And that's where we cliffhangered it, right? That's where we cut it off. So
he's a Tauren, right? He's a Minotaur. I got it.
I don't know. You know, I mean, well, so
he's a cow.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. You know, what are the World of Warcraft
Tauren?
Yeah, but isn't there like an actual cow person that's even less like Minotaur-like?
Less than Minotaur?
I know they have the panda people, and they. Yeah. BSBK raises the salient question, which brings us to our next thing: the deeds of Robin Dare. Is do you know what you're making Dare into? And the answer is I have not fully decided about that.
Cow person, you heard it here first. Done.
Done.
Writes itself.
Yes. He's going to be a cow person. I don't know. I don't have a great answer. Because I'm still trying to decide sort of what our path ahead is, right? And so these two things are sort of interlinked. Now, if we go back to the module as written, he is not really supposed to reveal himself as being involved in the plot. In fact, in the module as written, he turns over some of the cult members and goes, you guys need to confess to this horrible thing that you've done. Shame, 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 shame. And I think it's set up so that like in another adventure later on down the line, then his duplicitous nature finally gets revealed, right? That's certainly the way I interpreted it when I read it. I don't think, because I don't plan on using him later, I don't think that's a very satisfying reveal. I would rather have him to be revealed as somehow involved. Now, there are a couple different ways for him to be involved. He could be actively involved. He could be in the adventure. He is one of the masterminds of the cult, and he's actually responsible and sort of kind of like one of the chief poobahs, right, in the inner circle of people who are trying to bring Asmodeus worship into Waterdeep. So he could be actively involved in the plot. He could be passively involved in terms of maybe he's being blackmailed, or maybe he's being possessed, or some other way that sort of lets him off of the hook. Maybe his story is Xanathar summoned me to a private meeting in his chamber, and turns out he's a big deal in the theater scene, and he threatened me that he would undercut all of my productions and my play festival if I didn't cooperate with this. Like, there could be a double cross there, right? Yeah, you're gonna have to approve that link if you want people to see it.
Yeah.
Deleted link. Maybe I am thinking of the Tonka Buffalo people.
They're pretty much identical to the Tauren. They're just bison instead of cows.
Fair enough.
Wow.
Fair enough. The Diablo verse.
Well, they have a cow level, so I hope that they have.
So I have not 100% decided on what Dare is going to be. We also have to take stock of the situation, which is they are fully loaded in terms of their abilities and hit points. Like, they got the benefit of a long rest because Chad unlocked that for them. They do not have any weapons, right? Well, Avril brought Wave, I think. She brought Wave. I don't know whether Eric brought his Shattering Sword, his Sundering Sword, or not. Mm-hmm. But Thawne does not have Black Razor. Ava doesn't really need weapons. She can just turn into a monster. So, yeah, I do kind of agree with BSB Care that it feels like there needs to be some sort of confrontation wrap up in the offing. I don't know that this session is that session. Now, the deeds of Ravin Dare, some things that we need to consider of how he's involved. And I do want to just kind of point out, I think there's an ideal opportunity to somehow connect Ravin Dare with the reporter who is doing all of this kind of like smearing in the broadsheets. Mm-hmm. And the players have really like always kind of hooked into like, we want to talk to her, we got to get a hold of her, da 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 da. It would be great to fulfill that intention by making her somehow involved, important, more than she seems, etc. Like, I think she could be a great, more than Ravin Dare, I think she'd be a great payoff as like she's the actual mastermind behind this, or is the right-hand man, a right-hand lieutenant of somebody who's involved in this. I don't know. That's TBD. But I was just thinking about props and stuff like that, and they asked about a broadsheet last session. I'm like, I didn't have time to put one together. She could be the actual demon. There was a very interesting moment last week where they said, we'd like to kill Asmodeus. Uh-huh. And Xanathar was like, what? Yeah. So let's talk about... So Ravin Dare, just to kind of like I know this isn't a long section, but I wanted to kind of touch on, it's very clear that he is somehow involved in maybe hiring or managing the disruption of these things. He is definitely the person who is rewriting the scripts and inserting the rituals that cause people to sort of become mesmerized or enchanted with the idea of Asmodeus. I did have to kind of point that out to the players last week, that like, you don't know what that ritual was doing. Mm-hmm. You just know that there was a ritual. They switched to a different ritual that actually summoned the guy. So he's involved in the main scheme of like, let's get Asmodeus and some sort of subliminal messaging going on through the theater community. Like, he's the linchpin to that piece of it. But I want to also, if you're a Patreon backer, you can go to the Dropbox and pull up the letter, because the letter that Xanathar gave them allows us to open up a few more avenues, not necessarily of investigation, but of exploration, right? So there's a couple things. This is a letter from a guy named Danilo Thon to a lady, Martine Fenmarl. And Danilo is obviously some sort of Harper agent who's investigating the Bardic College of New Olam, right? So he points out a couple of things. There's a powerful mage and influential citizen named Erythor Kilraven who has cultivated a new Harper offshoot known as the Tel Tukira, right? The Moon Stars. So we know that this school is used to groom Harper agents, but he's grooming this separate set of agents called Moon Stars that are not affiliated with the Harpers and report to him. They don't report to the Harper Council, right? So that's something that we can use as a potential lead to investigate, put down, wipe out, flesh out, identify, whatever. Who's that roster of people? Now, maybe it's as simple as if they somehow defeat Rothendare in this next session, he's got the goods on these are the students who are in his inner circle or whatever. So that could be interesting. I'm not sure how. Oh, do you mean Ava could be connected to Wave somehow? I mean that's
been established.
That's already sort of established. And it is actually causing some friction within the party, I think, because I feel like Havana the player gets irritated that the character of Ava somehow has a stronger connection to Wave than she does. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something to be cognizant of and to pay attention to when you're thinking, oh, well, this would be a great story hook, as if like Ava and Wave were like could somehow super combo up and do unlock some sort of special ability. Yes, but you're doing that at the cost of that player feeling unique, right? And feeling like you're taking away the specialness of the item that she has and transferring it to somebody else, which is a little. I think we need to tread carefully, because it's kind of it's a heavy-handed move to pull.
Yeah.
So we've got Moonstar infiltration in the Bardic College. That's one thing. We've got this guy, Erythor Kilraven, who is essentially sort of fingered as one of the, if not the, big bad guy, right? And last session, in discussing this letter with Xanathar, he said, or I told the party, you get the idea that maybe this guy is a lord. He's one of the lords of Waterdeep. He's pretty well connected. This is a pretty sensitive matter, which makes it tricky to make him the big bad, because now you have, fighting one of the lords of Waterdeep should be a huge deal. Mm-hmm. So that's been established. There's also information in here that says this Erythor Kilraven character has created a place known as the Silver Safehold, which is an extraplanar clubhouse for himself and his followers, and is linked with his stronghold in Waterdeep named Ailerod's Tower. So, those are two major things that I think deserve, or at least offer potential avenues for investigation, which is, how do we identify who all the moon stars are? It would be nice to know kind of what some of their powers are, or what sort of influence they can wield, even though they're just students. It's also mentioned that there's a double agent who's working for the Harpers who may be able to finger some of these guys. This Sundaria Greenglass was the woman who was giving the recital, and they were just about to talk to her when they got approached by Rothendare. And then secondly, in terms of things that I think we could explore or potentially pay off, is this Silver Safehold. So we've done a lot of wandering the city, encountering, negotiating, bartering with different people, having fights in the streets, fights in the theaters, etc., etc., etc. We could make this Silver Safehold portion of the adventure, this last kind of 3 sessions or so, capstone, go back into a little bit of a dungeon crawl mode, and they have to penetrate the Silver Safehold and root out whoever's inside, or capture them, or whatever, however that maybe kind of shapes up. Mm-hmm. And that has a potential to be fairly interesting in terms of how do they gather some information about the place, and then also what sort of mission is this? Is it like a tactical infiltration, which the party is terrible at in terms of get in unseen and get out? Or could it be something like almost like a massive battle type of scene where, because it's this silver safehold that's in another plane, number one, we can go into our weird extraplanar stuff, which I love to do so much. Number two, we could do almost like a Storm King's Thunder sort of thing where there are a bunch of allied forces who are all assaulting it at the same time. And while these guys are storming the gates, the party is coming in through the, the back tower or something like that. So you could do something like that. We've got some different possibilities there. I think that also gives us the opportunity to bring in some of these allies that they've made along the way in terms of this mysterious benefactor that they've encountered, or Xanathar, Gingy, what have you, right? All of those people are potential allies for them or could potentially play a role. So I think that's interesting. So there's a number of different ways. The other thing that I think in terms of planning out our last 3 sessions or so is I feel like in terms of the overall arc, we need to have at some point a payoff with Gingy. Mm-hmm. That needs to get resolved one way or the other. Now, I forgot this detail in the recap. It was very interesting when Thawne decided to sell out Gingy to Xanathar.
Yes.
And Xanathar was like, oh, he knows more than he's let. Oh, he's involved, is he? Well, I will find out just how involved. I'll find out what he is. What he does actually know. Mm-hmm. Is Gingy an ally? That's a great question. I don't think we have a definitive answer to that. I consider him their foil, right? He's the guy who shows up who is a pain in the butt, who always seems to be getting the upper hand on them, and yet always seems to be offering them help.
Yeah.
Here, I will help you defeat Belloc in the Sacred Grove as long as you promise to free me from his service. Here, I will help you solve this case with a lead as long as you make sure my name isn't, so it's always very self-centered. It certainly works to his own advantage, but he's one of those guys that the party has had a vendetta against because he uses some very heavy-handed tactics to make sure that their agreement is enforced. And yet, by the same token, he hasn't out and out betrayed them or attacked them.
Right. Which is why most of the party doesn't feel the way that Thawne feels about him.
Yeah, well, and I think Gaurav said too, he was also role playing his character in terms of Black Razor had just fed on this demonic creature, and he was filled with bloodlust, and so he was going to go after Gingy unless the party could figure out a way to talk to them about it. Gingy did poison them. But that was part of like I said, that's his heavy-handed tactic. Yeah. Technically, he poisoned everybody in the dungeon. He only poisoned them. Come on. The thing is, I really do, I love the dynamic with Gingy. I think you have to be careful about pushing it too far, but he is such a fascinating, whenever he shows, oh, ho, 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 well done. He's such an ass. So that needs to be resolved. And then I think the thing about the map needs to be resolved. I think the map will resolve into go to, explore, Expedition of the Barrier Peaks.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So those are our potential paths forward in terms of things that we have on deck that we can either explore or potentially we have to pay off plot-wise. We just sort of did a miniature version of Plot Radar. There are some other things possibly purifying Black Razor, which I think would be... I don't know that we could do that by the end of the next 3 or 4 sessions. That feels kind of rushed, right? But if we could say the power of the Godfire could allow Black Razor to be reforged, there's a super huge hook right there. Mm-hmm. I think we've got some really interesting ways to entice the party into going to the Barrier Peaks and playing through that adventure. But I think that's definitely one of them. Is let's find a way to at least promise that Black Razor can his abilities can be reclaimed and repurposed toward good somehow. So, I'm not particularly curious what would happen if Thawne got alone with Gingy, because I feel like Gingy would either end up in the prison or end up slain. I'd have to look at the stat block. I don't know if it's canonical for the creature that I pulled out of the Tome of Beasts, but I'm kind of inclined to rule that Gingy is immune to necrotic damage, which definitely takes Black Razor down a big notch. Right? Although he's still like plus 11 to hit and plus a bunch of other damage.
Yeah.
But yeah, Gingy could also be the one who like knows the hook. Don't kill me because I can save that sword. I can save your father. One of the things that I think is on the table is Gingy goes, "Don't wipe me out. I can make that potion that you're having crafted."
It's true.
And that would be a great kind of crossover, because I think the party kind of remembers that, but it's so far on the back burner. If Gingy can go, I could make it next week. You just bring me the materials. I'd be done in a week.
Every time they get money, like when Xanathar, when they were like, when Avril's all like, I want 1,000 gold pieces. I'm all like, ask for 10,000 gold pieces, and you can pay for that stupid potion.
Yeah, Gingy is not technically, according to the stat block, undead. That doesn't mean that I'm not willing to fidget with it. But I certainly am far more intrigued by the idea that he's some sort of Shadow Fae type of character. Which I think is fun, stranded into this world.
Well, he's
no
like
good.
half elven or something, right? Isn't his original look when they originally came across him was a very pale elven or half elven?
Kind of like a weird elf. But I think I described him as having this weird pot belly though too, right? These pale drawn features, and this bald head, and like weird steampunk goggles and the hat. So, yeah, do they remember that they got the cash for the? I don't know. It's funny because they're like, we want money, and I'm like, you never do anything with it, so why?
Well, they were talking a lot about doing a shopping montage.
Yes, we didn't have time for that. I was both glad and disappointed simultaneously. It was a mixture of both. That we didn't have time to do a shopping montage for them to come up with their alternate disguises and alter egos. But we were getting so close to getting pretty deep into the session that I was like, let's move this along and get this last scene kind of like up and running. So, yeah. So I think those are our potential paths forward. I don't feel terrible about the idea that they have to somehow infiltrate the Silver Safehold, and corner Arathor Killraven in his lair or whatever. It was funny because like that name came out and they're like, that's the guy.
Yeah.
That's the bad guy. So.
Well, with a name like Arathor.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's where I think we're at. I think the big decisions for tomorrow night are the number one decision for tomorrow night is how do things progress with Ravendare right off the top, right? Is this some sort of stand-up fight? The other thing that they have probably forgotten, speaking of a bunch of stuff, do they remember, is Xanathar gave them a flask of that weird black glass magic circle teleportation magic, right? So if they got into a bind, they potentially have like a teleportation escape hatch that they can jump through.
Yeah. Will they take that? Will they remember it?
Will they remember it is the question. And that's always a tricky thing too, right? Is I feel like that's one of the reasons that it's beneficial to have a recap at the top of the session, because if I as the DM know that something like that is in their possession and I think they're likely to forget it, it's far better to go to the top of the session and go, hey, who wants to talk about what happened last week? And if they don't mention it, go, oh yeah, and don't forget you got that potion, that potion bottle that has the weird magical like mercury stuff in it. Oh yeah, that's right. And then at least it's been brought to their attention ahead of time, outside of a context of like you having some sort of bias or something like that. Whereas if you get into a combat and they're like, how are we even supposed to survive this encounter? And you have to go, well, look on your character sheets. then you're just making the players feel stupid, right? So it's a bit of DM like information finessing, right? Which is if you present it here, you've given them the opportunity. If they don't remember it, they're less likely to forget it at that point, right? I've seen it happen where players do forget it, but I've also seen it where it's something that gets dropped in your lap, and then 4, 5, or 6 sessions later, the DM puts you in this really tough fight, and you're like, how are we supposed to survive this? And then he's like, well, don't you remember something? No, obviously not.
Man,
are you sure?
Yeah.
Did you not look? maybe you should think about things. Just tell me what I'm forgetting. Don't stop being an ass about it. So that's, I mean, I almost forgot about it. I remembered it, but then I forgot about it, and I remembered again. So, yeah, it's tough, right? Like, as has been pointed out many times, the players don't have a context for what's relevant and irrelevant, and so they place emphasis on things that catch their interest for personal reasons, not potentially for personal or rational reasons, right?
Yeah.
Or not potentially for rational reasons. You could do sort of a recap type of, and we talked about having like an evidence locker kind of session where it's like, what do you have that points towards something? What do you have that what have you learned? Who have you talked to? And kind of writing all that down. You could potentially also have that sort of thing for your players' equipment, right? Okay, let's just quick run down all of the things that you've found. Because I will guarantee you, and I've seen this happen in home games, I've seen it happen in Adventurers League, you name it, the players will go, oh yeah, oh right, well, we have 7,000 gold pieces worth of powdered diamonds. Oh yeah, that's right. Oh yeah, we found that in that chest with the boots of speed. Oh yeah, we remember we argued about those boots for 25 minutes. Yeah, and somebody wrote down 7,000 gold pieces worth of powdered diamond dust, but they were mad about the boots of speed, so they didn't, they wrote it on their character sheet and never told anybody else. That sort of stuff happens all the time. So, if there's something else that you all would like to take up, I will do that with the time that we have remaining. We also we'll carve out a few minutes for our calendar, of course. But to me, that's the main task going forward for tomorrow night is how does Ravendare respond? Is it a smackdown brawling combat, which would be fair and interesting, and then we have a number of different places to go with that. Like he could potentially be this demonic creature that literally raises the building or summons somebody else in or something like that. He could also try and pull the ripcord and teleport out or access a secret door or whatever. He could bring in minions. He could bring in the Moonstar sect or whatever. He's got a number of different options on the table. I think it's a question of, okay, how do I really want to structure this particular moment, given the fact that the players are a little bit behind the 8 ball with not having their full complement of weapons. I think there's also an opportunity for Xanathar's patronage to make itself known, where if they get in a sticky spot, Xanathar somehow comes to their rescue, right? So, yeah, I guess I could also go the intimidation route, where this guy appears to be super powerful and tough, and just basically kind of bullies them, you're gonna accuse me, good luck.
Yeah.
So, what if the party actually loses? Are you thinking about a prison or hold-up type of thing? I think that gets into a tricky situation, right? Is if they get arrested by the City Watch, it's not going to take very long for, number one, Grayson to confess to everything that's been going on. And so that kind of lets them off the hook, right? And number two, one of their more powerful allies, whether it is Havana's weird adoptive sister, whatever that person is, or Xanathar, or one of the patrons of the theater to show up and kind of bail their ass out.
Right.
So given that those are the most likely outcomes of going to jail, I don't know that it's an interesting situation to stick them in, because I think the players are smart enough to go, well, why don't we just, first of all, Grayson's going to confess, and then they go, well, why don't we just tell the Watch everything that we know and let them handle it? Mm-hmm. And that sucks the drama out of the whole situation, because now all of the responsibility for investigating really logically should get transferred onto the City Watch.
Yeah.
And the City Watch should go, okay, you've told us everything that we need to know. We're going to put you under house arrest for the next 48 hours, and we'll get back to you. Like, logically, that's what should happen. And that doesn't make for entertaining play, right? The heroes have been robbed of their role as heroes. So I'm not sure that I would put them in the situation of, you've been arrested, you've been captured. Because I don't think it has great payoffs.
Right.
And the only real, and also Xanathar shows up, bails their ass out, or whoever. Even without spilling guts to the City Watch, it's just not interesting. Mm-hmm. It's not dramatic or suspenseful. So I'm going to avoid that particular option on the table. It is certainly something that you should consider. I don't mean to dismiss that particular course of action outright in terms of forever and ever, and as it applies to anyone's game. It is a tricky situation to put your players in, but it can be useful in this particular circumstance and where we're at in the investigation, the adventure. I don't think it is useful. Now, if they had gotten arrested maybe right after the parade or right after the demon massacre in the street, that maybe would have been a great moment for them to kind of get pulled into the one of the head magister's office and go okay, what's going on here? Mm-hmm. And then instead of having that interrogation with Xanathar, you can have that interrogation with somebody on the City Watch who's okay, well, what do you know? And what other actual evidence do you have? We could have had that.
Compare notes almost.
Yeah, we could have had that situation then in that particular scenario. I like the way things are going now, but I think in terms of our rising action dramatic arc, it's a setback that isn't worth exploring. Yes, Grayson is a total whistleblower. Mm-hmm. So with the 5 minutes that we have left, we're gonna just review the rest of the week. We've got a lot of the parade. I don't know why I call it. Maybe I should just shorthand refer to it as the murder parade. But it was when they had the chase scene through the streets, and I dealt all the cards, and there was all that collateral damage.
Yeah. Murder parade.
I don't remember what happened. Avril, did she throw something, or
she
stabbed a guy? Or...
She got thrown by an ogre or something that was had just avoided getting hit by someone else, something like that. Yeah, it was great. So
not their fault. No, not their fault at all.
So this week is great because we have 3 days of D&D stuff going on. So tonight, GM Eric Reichert is coming back and sitting back in the GM seat. He has done it before. He will do it again. And he is running Lords. I don't know why it says Prison Break. That's old. Should say Lords of Greyhaven. But it's essentially Prison Break.
It must have got reset when you changed the calendar to have the right time for disorganized play.
Maybe, yeah. So Lords of Greyhaven, basically they are sent in to quell a prison riot on a prison island, I believe. So
yeah, somebody has gotten too powerful, I think.
Yes. Yeah. So Sam DeLev, Kelly Nugent, Kelsey Osborne, and Jordan Pridgeon are the players, and
it's a wonderful cast.
Yeah,
if you've not seen those people individually, they're all terrific.
Yeah.
And as a whole, I can't wait to find out how that game goes.
Yeah, that's gonna be great. Kelsey's playing a dwarf. That's all I know so far.
Well, so then the question is Scottish accent or something else,
yes,
right?
Yes. Will she have a Rotic accent or not? Yes, he shot the juggler. Things got thrown and killed.
Avril released the cockatrices.
Right. I don't know why they're still allowed to be in Waterdeep after that. But
there's a lot of things that so part of the reason that I put in that mysterious benefactor last week was why are they still allowed to be in Waterdeep? Because somebody is watching over them.
Right. Yes, Estelle. So the next 4 Tuesdays, so starting with today and then 3 further Tuesdays, Lords of Greyhaven will be on tonight or Tuesday.
So that's a
nights.
D&D 5 game. Check that out
D&D
tonight.
game. So tomorrow we follow up with Ironkeep Chronicles and we check it all out and see how things play out with the cow person. And
Behold my flesh-colored tattoos.
I don't want to. I'm not looking over that way.
Yes, you are. You're looking over that way right here.
Just look directly ahead. Thursday, we do the recap of, and so far that's at 2
Thursday
o'clock.
at 2.
Yeah.
I will caution you that it is a busy week, but I did rearrange some of my things so that I could do. I'm going to be on television again on Friday.
Ooh.
Well, I'm filming something for television on Friday.
We'll talk about that when
So.
it comes out. So, and then Thursday night is a new Crit Juice with the boys. And then Friday, we are doing a 3-part miniseries of Teenagers from Outer Space with GM Mac Beauvais. It's Tracy King, Talene Guerra, Blythe Kala, and Meredith Placco are all on that. So that's all ladies. And it should be a lot of fun. That's going to be 3 Fridays. So tune in for that. And then
James V, just turn Twitter notifications on with Dungeon Bastard. That's all you have to do. That way you don't get all of Dom's spam and you get all of my brilliance. And you know what time it started. It's my fault. I have to be down in Santa Monica at 3 o'clock. So
Yeah, that will be the first real test of the limiter to see how it handles Crit Juice. Yeah, so far it's been okay though. It handled Uncanny Valley just fine, so I've got high hopes. Then nothing Saturday or Sunday. However, Sunday, if you go over to Enthusiamy, which is Amy Dallen's channel, there's actually going to be a little Future Girl reading, their web series that's going to be filmed here, but it's going to be on Amy's channel. So. So if you are feeling homesick for the old studio and you want to watch something on Sunday night, tune into Amy's channel for that.
got a beautiful light up shield, everybody.
Yeah, look at that. Look at that. Yeah, so there you go. So that's this week as we are starting to head into holidays and holiday season. So, yeah.
Yeah, we got a lot of cool stuff on deck and plenty of fun D&D stuff and also just some fun one-shots and whatnot. And I would like to somehow, whether it, if chat decides to unlock the Master Tom and his hapless Paladin scouting expedition, that's cool. Otherwise, I would like to do some sort of one shot at the end of the year as kind of like a special, like, close it out, goofy fun kind of thing. I haven't decided what that is in the slightest.
Jordan Caves Callerman and I were talking about doing some holiday themed episodes of things, perhaps in the week prior to before we're all off for Christmas.
Yes.
Anyway, there you go. So that's the calendar, and that's it. I think.
Very
for
good.
us.
Hey, everybody, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate your thoughts and insight and opinions and all of your patronage. So I definitely, your ideas
Oh my.
help craft the adventure, especially as we go way off the beaten path here from where the written adventure went. So I want to thank all of our mods who step in and help keep the channel safe, friendly, clean, and accessible. Thanks to everybody who donates, who is a Patreon backer. The end of the month is almost nigh. So if you want to get in and get some of the goodies that we put in our Patreon box, or perhaps have one of our fine GMs run a game for you, please join and check out our Patreon page.
Hey, Jay Stu.
So check that out. And thanks to everybody who just shares and spreads the word. Either becomes a Twitch subscriber.
Yeah, thanks to the new subs today.
Yeah, thanks to Nelzone42 and Laura Lania and Thomas W. D. Young.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, thank you for subbing up that.
We're okay on our monthly goal. We are in a stretch goal right now.
But keep in mind we're going to be shorted probably 2 weeks worth of content over the holidays.
Yeah. December is going to be pretty slow. So we're trying to bulk up in November. So we'll play with that. I think Eric's got some cool rewards and stuff for some unlocks for his game. So definitely check that out tonight if you can. Otherwise, it will be on YouTube and Twitch later. But yeah.
All right. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for being a fan and a supporter. Until next time, let's dungeon!
Yeah, let's dungeon.
0 for 3. 0 for 3.
Come on, that was good.